英語に詰まったらヘルプを求めるかもしれま
Good
せん。
afternoon, everyone, to this very fascinating session that we have on the development of research interfaces in Asia. We have 45 minutes altogether, but I want to devote at least 10 minutes to interaction with the audience. So after you have listened to the panel speaking, I'm sure you have some questions in mind or interventions, and there will be time to do this. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce very briefly the panel here on stage, beginning with Koichi Tanaka, who is well known for his leading cutting-edge research in the development of tools and methods for analysis of protein and carbohydrate structures as his research fields. On my left side is Professor Osumi, from the, who is one of the very few distinguished professors of Tohoku University. There are 25 distinguished professors, and she is one of them. She has a great interest in how to further the career paths of young scientists and also of women in science. Her own speciality is in the pre- and postnatal development of the brain, and in particular the neurogenesis and maintenance of neural stem cells at cellular and molecular level. Then I turn to Professor Asahima, who is Emeritus Professor of the University of Tokyo and Fellow and Director of Research Center for Stem Cell Engineering at the National Institute of Advanced Industrialized Science and Technology, and also the Executive Director of the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science. And then on my right side, at the other end of the panel, is Dr. Beate Heissig. She is Associate Professor at the Department of Stem Cell Dynamics Center for Stem Cell Biology and Regenerative Medicine here at the University of Tokyo. She has been educated in Germany with a PhD, has been spending time at the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center at Cornell University, and her studies in the lab are focusing on the role of adult stem cells in regenerative and cancer biology. So this is a very distinguished panel here. My name is Helga Novotny, and some of you heard me speaking in the morning. I would like to invite Mr. Tanaka here to give us a short introduction to the theme. He has thought a lot about it, and I think he has some important messages for all of us. Please.
はい、田中です。英語ではなく日本語で失礼します。はい、わざと日本語で話します。はい、今日は絵を用いての説明ができませんので、皆さんの頭の中で、描いてください。今日は日本語、言葉で伝えることに、こだわります。わかりやすいように最初から結論、私の考え、仮説をお話しします。自然科学は世界共通です。しかし新たな法則、真理を見つけ出す方法は様々です。個々人が根ざしている文化や得てきた知識、経験で真理に迫る方法も様々です。私の受賞対象は科学です。化学ですが、実は大学まで、科学を専門にしたことがありません。大学では、電気アンテナ工学が専門でした。コンクリートの壁の中に、金属の棒、アンテナを入れ、電波を吸収する研究でした。日本では、企業に就職したら異なる分野で仕事をすることが多く、私もそうでした。会社で素人の私が、科学実験をさせられました。はい。横道にそれますが、私は漫画、アニメが好きです。はい。漫画文化が盛んな日本では、大人でも恥ずかしくないですね。で、漫画は一言で言えば、要点を押さえた簡略化した図を描くことです。はい。元の話に戻りまして、私は、会社での実験、失敗しました。間違って金属の粉末にグリセリンを混ぜてしまった。その時にもったいない と捨てずに使い、発見につながった。日本のもったいない文化に影響されているかなと。実はアンテナ研究と私の発見には共通点があります。アンテナは金属の棒、電波は電磁波の一種。一方、私の実験は金属の粉末で、電磁波、レーザー光を吸収させること。無意識のうちにもそのつながり、インターフェースを見出すため、私は簡略化されたその漫画を頭の中に思い描いていたのではないかと。だからこそ失敗したにもかかわらず、分野を超えた発想、もしかしたら成功するかもと思えたのかもしれません。もう一つ別の話です。遺伝子、今回は遺伝子の関係ですので、それと生物、病気の解明に関連した話です。遺伝子情報は、タンパク質を作るために翻訳されます。で、さらに糖の鎖、糖鎖がくっつきます。で、その糖鎖の違いが病気の原因や結果であることがよくあります。で、タンパク質は一本の鎖、糖鎖は様々な部分に何種類もくっつき、いくつにも枝分かれしています。極めて複雑です。で、そんな糖鎖を地道に解き明かす先頭に立ってきたのは日本です。複雑であると同時に曖昧さ、揺らぎもあります。で、その構造が漢字の構成に似ているように思います。アルファベットが一列に並んでいるタンパク質のアミノ酸配列とは異なり、糖鎖は上下左右に伸び、多少間違っていても意味が通じます。で、漢字を使うのはアジアの一部ですが、アジアは日本のものづくりの中心になっています。で、ものづくりは様々な分野の専門家が集まります。例えば車は化学物質、ガソリンを燃やし、機械部品、ピストンを動かし、電気回路で制御している。乗り心地といった心理学も必要。で、このような現場が、目標に向かう仲間意識や、異分野融合を生み出す素地になっています。実は私の専門分野である質量分析、この研究の場は異分野融合の場です。だからこそ電気工学の私でも科学の発見ができたと言える。医学生物学の話に戻ります。これからますます生命の複雑な現象を解明しなければならない。一つの言葉の文化、学術分野に基づくチーム、英語文化だけでは発想に限りがある。で、異分野、異文化、考えの異なる人々が集まり、アイデアを出し合える場、欧米のアプローチとは異なる、アジアの貢献、期待できると思います。再度結論です。自然科学は世界共通ですが、新たな法則、真理を見つけ出す方法は様々です。私は日本語の環境で育ちました。もったいない、地道、曖昧さ、揺らぎ、漢字、あるいはものづくり、これらが意味することを 100% 翻訳することはできません。翻訳できないということは、別の言葉、言語、文化にはない発想ができる。もしかしたら、世界であまり話されていない、言葉、言語の方が、極めて独創的な発想ができるかもしれません。複雑な生命の神秘を解き明かすため、アジアの様々な文化、発想の仕方が、これからますます貢献できる、期待されていると思います。以上です。Sorry, in Japanese.
Thank you very much. I think the introduction sets the scene and the main theme. And I invite you, please, to tell us about your own experience, how it relates to what we have just heard, and also your vision of diversity and how this can be implemented in a way that reaches the goals that have been set out.
Hi, I'm Noriko Osumi from Tohoku University. Actually, our university is the third imperial university in Japan, and so we are the first to accept it. The first 3 women students in about 100 years ago in 1913. So based on that kind of some history, I'd like to say, my experience is a little bit limited, so I cannot say that my opinion is common to the all Asian countries. That I don't know, but still I think that we Japanese have a little bit too much kind of some fearness or anxiety to go abroad. And so that kind of thing is not good. And especially case of the women. So if I go abroad and after I get off at the airport, I feel like very free. So at that time, I realized how much pressure I have felt everyday daily life in Japan. So probably the women in Japan is so much pressured compared to men. So that kind of thing is not good for the to make the diversity in the field of the science and technology. And one thing I'd like to say related to the Tanaka Sensei's speech, and so the globalization is important to globalize, recruiting many people, many different countries, many different cultures, which is really good thing. But the problem is that we need to communicate, in this case, in English. In ancient days, it is Latin, so it's more fair to all the countries. But unfortunately, so we are now living in the modern country after the World War II. So our science language is so much dominated in English. So by that way, I think the globalization have some kind of internal conflict with some kind of diversity in culture and ideas. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much. I think you also emphasize the point that science is an international and global activity. We speak about brain circulation and no longer about brain drain. And some of the most talented people are also the ones who are most mobile, because they are eager to move outside the country, to discover what is made in a different way somewhere else. So the diversity element comes in again. But then as a country, every country wants some of these people to come back and must, of course, offer the opportunities to come back. I would like to bring in Beate Heisig. She has moved from Europe and from the US to Japan, so she has a double perspective, both what is happening here, but also your own experience.
Well, let me start maybe with my own experience, and that is that, well, starting off as a medical doctor, I had the rare chance of going abroad and doing science. And really going to, at that time, New York, it was really free. I felt really free. So I have a similar experience to her. And that is simply because a different country can redefine yourself and can open your mind, because different ideas floating around in different countries. So there's mainstream thinking, but it's different anywhere. And the same happened when I then moved from the States here to Japan 11 years ago. And it was, again, a different mindset I was faced with, and I needed to adjust. My own thinking needed to adjust to this. And this kind of adjustment made myself, I guess, more flexible. And I think that this kind of mental flexibility is a very important driving force for doing science. And this flexibility, also what Mr. Tanaka was mentioning, is the ability to be okay to make a mistake. But be okay to make a mistake, but to learn looking. And this is something, for example, I have discovered here in Japan. It's a very visual culture. It's very beautiful. You come here, it's now sakura time, so you see all this blossoming. You go to a sushi restaurant and you are the decoration just blows you away because it's so beautiful. So the Japanese people have managed to learn to see and not so much to talk. And this is something I was faced with when I first encountered Japanese people. There aren't that many in Europe, but I first met the first Japanese in America. And I was like, why they are not talking? They have nothing to say. And I realized coming here, they have lots of things to say. But it is just the cultural difference, I think.
Yes, I think in addition to the scientific culture that can also vary from field to field or from industry and academia, the culture in which you live impregnates also the way how science is done to some extent, and we have to realize this. I now turn to Professor Asashima, and before I ask for your experience, I still want to ask you also as someone who is moving in the kind of policy circles, and I think this is very important, that the problems that, or the issues that have come up here, young people who are perhaps afraid to leave the country because they may not find a position when they come back. This happens not only in Japan, I can assure you, it also happens in other countries. But how does a policymaker look at these issues? And then please go and speak about your own experience.
Yeah, my name is Asashima. So our JSPS is always so fostering to the young generation to go to the abroad. And at that time, so many people do not have such a good position after come back to Japan. So one of the problem in Japan is so at the moment, so situation is slightly different from the old time. And so my thinking is so there is a culture is different from the foreign countries, Japan. And the keyword is biodiversity. So when we go to the abroad, in Japan, there are so many forests and so many cultures, good cultures, like as Dr. Tanaka said, motenashi is a little bit difficult to say, translate in Japanese. And so if I can understand well, that is a respect and pleasure, and so the honesty. So that is a very difficult thinking from other countries. And in Asian countries, there are so many tropical areas, and so many. Japan is surrounded by the sea. Under the sea, 3,000 meters below, there is so many animals and plants and bacteria, so on. But nobody knows such a things. So I think to know the diversities and biodiversities and mineral biodiversity also, this is a frontier parts. So we have a lot of the frontier parts or challenging parts in the future. I hope the next generation try to the spirit of challenge to the not only the biological field, but also the human society. One of the case, as a drug, in our cases, was if someone has a patient, we want to find out only the one single drug. However, in Eastern thinking is we want to purify, not so much purify. And from the source is natural science, natural materials, like as plants and animals. That is a combination of the materials, not so single one. That is very important to the complexity and to not so purified one. So for a long time, Eastern drug or medicine is very, very important when we have such a culture. So I think for the young generation, want to have the pride and the spirit of the challenge and go to the abroad society.
Thank you. In Stockholm, there is also a museum of Nobel Prizes, and there is one room that is dedicated to milieus of creativity. And I think there you can see on the screen Nobel Prize winners, laureates like Mr. Tanaka here, speak about the particular group and the milieu that nurtured their creativity. And when you spend some time in this museum, you discover how many different routes there are, how many different ways there are to become creative. And I think this is something that is to be nurtured. And you are right, of course, that in Western science, in the history of Western science, we have gone through a very successful program of reductionism. Has been very successful. But now we are discovering that there is a much more complex way of approaching things, holistic, complex, and I think this will be the next wave in science, moving into the complexity and dealing with complexity. So we have sort of followed on from your introduction a bit, brought in the personal experience. But I would like to focus a bit more on what you see as specific Japanese, because our topic is in Asia. So I'm also curious to hear how you see the situation of Japan compared to your Asian neighbors, and of course Asia compared to what used to be the dominance of the United States and Europe. And let me just add here, we can see it very clearly in the overall publications. Even if the US and Europe keeps publishing, contributing to scientific publications at the same rate as they do now, percentage-wise they will go down because there are other nations coming up, and most of these nations are in Asia. So I invite your thoughts on it. Would you like to come in or briefly?
So many aspects, so many...
To say something about Asia?
Asia. So, because most of the development and research in 20th century were done by European and American. So yes, that is a very good system of creating something and developing and getting some new idea. But we, especially Asian countries, completely different from English or European way of thinking. So we have much more room to get some new idea, but just by using their own language and own culture or their own experience. So because, as you said, the nature is very complicated. So one way of thinking would be not good enough to review such complicated system. And just one example I explained is Chinese letter kanji. So, and people, especially probably in East Asian people, they are living in rich in nature, and we can feel the nature is so complicated, and try to not analyze. Analyze is try to separate, as he said.
Synthesis.
So try to see as it is. So it's not so scientific in a European way, but we can feel something and we can extract something, some kind of rule. I'm not so happy to say I can say completely yes, I can say completely no. There is some intermediate answer. So as I said, yuragi or fuzzy, that is very comfortable feeling for Japanese. And so there will be some kind of way to contribute to introduce such kind of intermediate fuzzy thinking to science. Just one example.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me just say that historians of science tell us that what you call scientific varies with the period. It goes with science. So what was scientific in the 17th or 18th or 19th century is not necessarily the same thing as scientific in the 20th and in the 21st. So we are really, science is a moving target. And new ways of describing and practicing what is scientific are coming up. And I think you're right in reminding us that we have to see it also in this way, that there is an enormous contribution that Asia can bring to it. Maybe Beate can come in at this point. You also spoke about the importance of visualization in Japan. And we now have so many data. We are working with so many data. We cannot look at data without visualizing them. So I think this is a big advantage for Asian science, if you want.
Yeah, I feel that this ability of seeing a complex system and reducing it to a very simple one, that's really part of the Japanese culture. You go and see a stone, you go to Kyoto to these stone gardens, and you see it's simple structures, but they convey a very complex situation. And I think maybe that's the fascination why the Japanese scientists are so much now on vogue, or why this is becoming so interesting, because they have the ability through their being raised to go from the complexity, from this adoring nature, to reducing it to very simple forms. And I think this distillation of information is, I think, a strength probably of the Japanese people. And I can for sure say that my husband himself is also a scientist, and he for sure has this ability, whereas me, coming from this European background, is more a person of asking questions. And so we bring culturally a certain makeup of how we approach one question. And I think the globalization part is that when we bring diversity in the system, when we bring people of different cultures together, that we bring all our background, our tools, and having people with different tools can just make a much more beautiful building.
I turn to Noriko Osumi, and the point was about diversity and that it enriches what we do.
Right.
Would you say this is also the case for having more women in science?
Yeah, I think that women in Japan especially is so much less representative, and which is a big loss in Japan. And so because of the talent is the same, and why only 1/4 of the population is going to the science at the level of the college, which is really different from the other European countries. I don't know the score of how about in the Asian countries, but the percentage at the level of the college is very low, only 25% or something in the science and technology field, which is really, I think there's a loss of the talent, and which should be changed.
What can we do to change it?
Yeah, I hope in the near future, the more the young generation, especially the women scientists, come up. And so we must change a little bit the situation, not only the position, but also the situation. So young generation thinking must be changed. So if they go to the academic areas, they only stop their own academic position. But if we look at the more wide, so the company or some other venture business or some other publishers, media, and so on, there are so many ways to go to the enhance their abilities. So I think the most important thing is for the way to work as a place is also there is a diversity. So not only the academic area is not so, of course, important. However, other field is also very important. So such a combination or changing of the situation, more powerful power is raised up in Japan. So I hope the mixture and communication each other's is very, very important.
Thank you. Before turning to the audience now, as I announced, I just look here to my right and to my left. Is there still something you would like to say to each other?
Well, I guess one thing concerning how can we get women really to stay in science or contribute larger is we always only think about the fact we need to change the women. In a sense, this is not really the case. The women are basically, the environment is what actually makes them stop. You have a young scientist, very talented young person, and she has great grades, she publishes, and then it is, okay, she is getting a baby. And then the family, her husband, the bigger family, the environment dictates her, in the end, to stop working. And I think this is where the society needs to jump in and really change the mindset. And I think probably this is something the current politicians here in Japan actually are trying to do, this getting women in the workforce. And it's not you need to change the women. It is more you need to change the mindset of the rest to give them a chance to go into the working force.
Noriko.
Okay, so can I say something more? So I think that one example is that the starting time of the seminars. If I go to abroad in foreign universities, I give a talk always at the lunchtime, but which is very rare in case of the Japanese universities. Usually the seminar is set up at the end of the work, evening, from 5 or 6 o'clock or 7 sometimes, which protects the women who have children to attend such kind of the seminar. So by that way, so they are not, doing a very bad thing, but only the setting up of the seminar at the very end of the work hours, that excludes the women to participate. Those kind of things should be changed by more the general way. Yeah.
I think there are many practical things. It's not so much bad intentions.
Right.
It's not so much open discrimination. This has disappeared. But then there is the unconscious
Right.
bias. And this can only be changed if you make it explicit, if you point it out, like you have just said, change the hour of the seminar so that women can also participate. And there are many of these kind of simple, practical things that together, to come back to the holistic way, that together can really change it. Time has now come to involve you in the audience. Please, there are microphones in the room. Please raise your hand. The microphone will somehow get to you. And if you have a question to a particular person here on the panel, yes. So please raise your hands and you get the microphone. And if you have a question to a particular person or to the entire panel, please say so.
So,
maybe you say your name and where you are from.
yeah, my name is Dharmendra Tiwari. I'm from India actually. And now I'm more feeling like I'm Japanese because I'm living from 4 years. Not so long, just 4 years, not like Dr.
Okay.
So,
I see.
like I have, I just want to get your idea, like you say you want to promote women, or you say you want to promote youngster. I mean, from many foreigner when they came in beginning, I heard they say Japan is a different planet. If this is different planet, I think it's a beautiful planet, but but like in beginning, it's really tough for them to adapt. And if they stay for short time, of course they try too hard to adapt, but somehow after few months they feel they should go to consult with psychiatric. I'm sorry to say that. And also I feel like Japanese system is more obedient. People want to obey their boss. Is it? Like they don't want to, even if it's necessary to discuss, like in group meetings or somewhere, they don't want to discuss so much. They are so silent. I don't know why. Or they feel like they should just follow their boss. So when I personally discuss with some youngsters in master, they believe they are almost tired from research and they will switch from research to the job. And another reason is they don't have security to go for PhD to get money. So they have to pay a lot of money for getting PhD. So I think, I don't know, these are the things how to make more communicative between higher position to lower position, and how to provide more fund at the PhD level may improve. I guess, I don't know. I mean, I just want to get your suggestion. Okay. Or in beginning, of course, Japanese people, as I heard, like they want to see more, they want to talk less, but so they become resistant to adapt many things. But when people came from other place, like in beginning they are not adopted, but maybe they are getting adopted.
So, thank you.
I'm sorry, yeah, it's getting longer. So can you briefly say what are your major points?
We will come back to you. Maybe I would like to take one or two more questions so that the panel can respond to everything. Yeah, please, the microphone here in the middle. You have a microphone? It's coming.
Just press.
Slowly. Sorry, I'll try to be brief. It's just a thought on the future of publication.
Can you please get up that everyone sees you? Can you just say your name and where you're from?
I'm Mr. Bocan from France. On the future of publication, traditionally in science, we have had established publishers who have been the gatekeepers of knowledge. And it seems we are moving towards a sort of democratization of knowledge with the internet and open publishers. Should we worry that the integrity of research and science might suffer as a consequence?
Okay. Okay. Other questions? Can you move the microphone there? Yes.
My name is Lia Mei. I'm from China, and I have a question. There are so many research institute and the university. So I think in many countries, even in Japan, some young scientists should feel very serious pressure from the serious competition. But also we can see Japan has already have so successful achievement in science and so many Nobel Prize laureates. So I want to know what's the biggest advantage of the education system or our research system to stimulate so many scientists focusing on such long-term projects, which is not so competitive, but very promising in the future.
Thank you very much. One quick last question here, and then we try to answer, please.
Okay, I'll try to be really, really fast. So basically, as a...
You are?
I'm Asi, I'm from Indonesia. So my question would be, right now I'm a PhD student, and I realized a lot that a lot of the things that I'm doing has very distant application in society. So my question is, how do we integrate more, I mean, the awareness of the society itself with the public and make sure that science actually answers public's concerns, so it doesn't just do science for science itself, although it's beautiful, but actually doing science for the benefit of society. How do we ensure that? That would be my question.
Thank you. So we heard questions about what can Japan do to be more accommodating to people who come from outside. We had a question about integrity, which is a question everywhere. We had a question about relationship to society, and a question, what does Japan do? Obviously, very, very right, given the number of Nobel Prize winners. So maybe if you want to pick up any one of these issues, and briefly, because we have only 2 minutes left.
Sorry, just very briefly. I'm sorry, I cannot answer to those questions.
No, just what you like to.
Yeah, the reason why I try to say importantness of manga is yes, please try to write manga illustration by yourself when you try to communicate with the people, especially from foreign people. And they are pretty much surprised. Oh, that is very easy to understand. And that is not only for between foreign people, but also for the people from different discipline. So the physicists, they will use their own language, and the chemists, they are using their own language. So it's difficult to communicate. But by using such kind of illustration, we can share the ideas, and so please try to learn and try to be very skillful to write the manga. Sorry, that is one more thing I would like to say. Sorry, that's all from me.
We are coming back to visualization. You know, I have seen competitions of people who have to write their project, make a drawing on a napkin. And this is very interesting how you can visualize what you are doing on a piece of paper, but also to communicate.
So that illustration will be very useful for persuading the angel people, the people who has money. They cannot understand science, but they can understand the drawing. So easy way to persuade such people.
I'm sorry, we are really running out of time. I want to thank you in the audience for having raised these questions, And I want to thank my panel members here for a very enriching and hopefully looking into the Asian future discussion with you. Thank you very much.
ただいまより15分間の休憩とさせていただきます。お手洗いは7階に1箇所、5階に2箇所ございます。次のストリーム2では、ゲノム革命の学術的波及効果と題して15時から開始いたします。なお、7階ではストリーム1、5階ではストリーム3も同時開催しております。それぞれ会場間のご移動は自由になっております。引き続き、ノーベルプライズダイアログ東京2015をよろしくお願いいたします。We will now take a 15 minutes break. There is one restroom on the 7th floor and two on the 5th floor. Next, Stream 2 is entitled, What Does the Genomic Revolution Mean for Other Disciplines? And will begin at 3 p.m. Stream 1 is being held concurrently on the 7th floor, and Stream 3 concurrently on the 5th floor. We are welcome to move freely between streams. Please stay with us for the rest of the Nobel Prize Dialogue Tokyo 2015. ご来場の皆様にご案内申し上げます。本日はノーベルプライズダイアログ東京2015にご来場いただき、誠にありがとうございます。会場内は一部を除き自由席となっております。前の席から順にお詰め合わせの上ご着席ください。会場内は禁煙でございます。指定の喫煙所をご利用ください。携帯電話は電源をお切りいただくか、マナーモードへの設定をお願い申し上げます。また、恐れ入りますが、乳幼児連れのご参加はご遠慮ください。本日は同時通訳をご利用いただけます。同時通訳レシーバーは会場入り口にて配布しております。日本語はチャンネル1、英語はチャンネル2でございます。必要に応じてご利用ください。同時通訳レシーバーは出口で回収させていただきます。お持ち帰りにならないようご協力をお願いいたします。会場内では Wi-Fi が使用可能です。本イベントではストリーミング配信を行います。公式ホームページからアクセスできますのでご活用ください。なお、有事の際はスタッフの指示に従って待機・避難していただきます。次のストリーム2、ゲノム革命の学術的波及効果は15時を予定しております。開始まで今しばらくお待ちください。Welcome everybody. May I have your attention please? Thank you very much for coming to the Nobel Prize Dialogue Tokyo 2015. We have a number of reserved seats, but the rest of the hall is open seating. Could you kindly move up front to fill the seats from front to back? Then make yourselves comfortable there. Smoking is not allowed in this venue. Please use the assigned smoking area if necessary. Please turn off your cell phones or switch them to silent mode. We also request that you refrain from bringing babies and small children with you. We will have simultaneous interpretation today. The simultaneous interpretation receivers are being distributed at the entrance to the venue. Please pick one up if you wish to listen to the interpretation. Japanese is available on Channel 1 and English is available on Channel 2. Please return the simultaneous interpretation receivers at the exit after the session. We ask for your cooperation to make sure that they are not taken home with you. Wi-Fi is available in this venue. This dialogue will be live streamed over the internet. Please access the official website of the dialogue to view the live stream. In case of any emergency, please wait for instruction from our staff. If necessary, you will be given directions for evacuation. The next stream too, what does the genomic revolution mean for other disciplines? And will begin at 3 p.m. Please wait a little longer until we are ready to begin.
We had a full audience before. We have assembled a panel here. I hope you can hear me. A very distinguished panel here. You know and have met already Tim Hunt. You have met Luisa Fresco on the podium. You have not met on the podium as yet Katsuto Kato next to me, and Kurt Wittrich you have met, I think, in another context because he has spent some time here already in Tokyo. The topic of our panel discussion is: what does genetic revolution mean for other disciplines? And I think what is meant by this title is to see to what extent things have changed, to what extent, for instance, in biomedicine, these changes have been taken up, how have they been incorporated. But I think also apart from the changes in the scientific landscape, it may also be of interest to see what are the kind of new collaborative ventures that are coming up. If you have new tools, very often they facilitate collaboration across different research fields. CRISPR may be such a tool that you have the possibility of engaging with people working in very different fields away from you, and then interesting things happen. And I think we also want to say a bit about the way how we relate to society. I know you had a discussion already, but I think in every one of these sessions, it's important to think about. And at the very end, I want to ask my panel the question: where do you see the future, the developments?
I think we cannot entertain this here because we are supposed to talk about the future in the last round table, so we shouldn't preempt what we have to do next.
I have to disagree with you, dear Kurt, because I have been asked to come to the next panel with the result of this panel's input.
Right.
So we are building up for the future. So in any case, we are now with the topic: what does genetic revolution mean for other disciplines? And if I may start with Luisa.
Yes, thank you very much, Helga. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here again. Meaning for other disciplines. I think we cannot underestimate, for my field, food, agriculture, and environment, or the life sciences, biological life sciences, not medical ones, the importance of the genetic revolution. It really changes everything. Not that the classical methods of breeding, for example, in themselves are wrong, but it gives us a sense of focus, which I would like to summarize as a design type approach. What we do differently now is that we are far more focused on what can be changed, how we want it to be changed, what kinds of traits in plants and animals can be selected in a far more precise manner, in a matter of months or years rather than generations or decades. So the first impact on all the areas that I'm concerned with is focus. Focus and selectivity. Then secondly, it leads to a far stronger interdisciplinarity, because what used to be different disciplines, such as genetics and, for example, soil science, plant pathology turn out to be very, very closely related, because in all kinds of ways we look at organisms, for example in the soil, or for example pathogens, how they affect the genome of the plant or the animal or whatever. And as I showed this morning, a lot of the work we do on pathology has to do with a continuous rat race between the pathogen and the host animal or the host plant. And genetics allows us to think across what used to be really tight disciplinary boundaries and get completely new concepts. Those concepts, of course, indeed are, Helga, new tools. They're also particularly tools in modeling. And I think the advance of computer-based genetics and modeling means that we do things really quite differently from the way we did them before. Has that had an impact on society? Yes, I think, particularly in our field, the concerns about what genetics would be doing to something as simple as our daily food are really profound, and we should deal with that. We should not be in our ivory tower and not communicate it, as we discussed in the previous panel. But I think in general, the genetic revolution really means a scientific revolution at large.
Thank you, Louise. I think you emphasize rightly the way how we can now go about in a much more focused and design-oriented. I did not say rational because there is all kinds of rationality.
Wow.
But I just want to emphasize the design element. But you also were speaking about new kind of interdisciplinarity, and I wonder, this is a question to both of you, to what extent does this trickle down and show up in the curricula?
The teaching.
The teaching, because interdisciplinarity in a way, it happens on a practical level, but then there is the question, how is this transmitted to the next generation? And in which ways are teaching institutions, universities prepared to redesign their curriculum so that the new generation can jump in and build on the shoulders of the generation before? So I think if we speak about interdisciplinarity, this is an important component.
In the last session, in the last session where Tim was also together, I said that the high school curriculum of biology in Japan changed dramatically a few years ago. And so that incorporated a lot about molecular biology and biochemistry. So that kind of a basis will serve as a basis. But of course, you're talking about interdisciplinarity, but on the basis of that, I'm hoping to see more interactions between students and researchers in different fields.
Yes, it's a difference whether you're talking about schools or universities. I mean, when I was at university, I think we were, because of the structure of the Cambridge courses, they're by their very nature interdisciplinary. I mean, you have to do 3 different subjects.
The tripod.
The tripods, yes. And I was very lucky because in those days, we were really close to the frontier. And so often people would tell us about the very latest experiment, and we were encouraged to think, well, okay, that's the latest result. Now where are you going to take that? What's the next experiment you do after that? And that was very, very stimulating for me. It was rather different in school, though, I think, and it still is.
No, I was thinking of university education, but of course, the earlier you start, the more.
I was asked to comment on the British biology curriculum, and I think the people were really worried that it was a bit sort of old-fashioned. But what I found was it wasn't really old-fashioned enough in some respects. They sort of did mention stem cells and iPS cells, but the sort of the basic structure was very funny. It seemed to me. I was distressed by it.
I'm from Kyoto, Faculty of Science, and where the first Nobel Prize was given to Professor Yukawa. And Yukawa is very well known to have had a strong interest in biology when molecular biology came out. So I think university level is also very important, so that the front runner of science show the interdisciplinarity.
Well, Francis Crick was my hero, and Francis was par excellence. He was trained as a physicist, but passionately interested in biology. In fact, he was almost the only man in Cambridge who really did span the whole field, and very inspiring to us youngsters.
Well, let me provoke you.
Let's face the fact that not every university is Cambridge.
Well, that's true.
Nor does every university have a Nobel Prize winner who leads the course. So these are the lucky exceptions, I would say. Luisa, you are the president of the University of Wageningen. So to what extent do you see what is going on in science and driven by the genetic revolution, what we call the genetic revolution? How is this reflected in the curriculum, not only in your own university, but...
No, actually, I think we've made for a long time in these kinds of fora, we've always been very worried about interdisciplinarity, and we always said, oh my God, these students are too monodisciplinary, and if you are a scientist, you cannot publish if you're not monodisciplinary, and so on. I think that has changed dramatically. The number of journals that now cover interdisciplinary fields or fields of application or are at the boundary, think of all the biological stuff and the chemical stuff, it's easy to publish that kind of stuff. The problem is on the wider interdisciplinary. So within the life sciences, I don't see much of a problem. And we see continuously that curricula adjust and so on, and you can publish the work. But is it possible to get stuff that comes from something like the social sciences and is combined with some of the genetic work? Can you get that published? And is there a curriculum for that? I think that is a more difficult question. And it's a question that you cannot solve just by getting a different curriculum. It's really also, I think, being problem-driven rather than science-driven that solves those kinds of problems. And you cannot have interdisciplinary as a kind of whitewash across everything and then think that it's all solved. I find that the issue in a way is not interesting, whether it's interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, whatever, as long as the question that you're asking is being answered with the right type of tools. And as long as we have curricula in which we train people to ask the right questions and use the right kind of tools. And how we call it afterwards, perhaps that's not a big issue.
Okay. Any thoughts on your side, Kurt?
Well, I have... let's talk only about frontline research. And I think that there is a big misunderstanding regarding interdisciplinarity. In my experience, it doesn't lead anywhere if we educate students which have, on the bachelor's level, who study biology, chemistry, and physics and don't know anything and are not able to do top-notch work, technically speaking, in any of these. I resisted, you may even recall this perhaps, I resisted steadfastly to introduce a curriculum of biophysics at the ETH Zurich, because I wanted mathematical physicists, I wanted experimental physicists, I wanted chemists and biologists, and then I put them together for graduate research, and they started to talk to each other and learn from each other. But the important thing is that they brought along the know-how and the technical ability to do the work properly.
No, I think what is...
and I think that's really a big misunderstanding nowadays, that people start talking about interdisciplinary education of students early on and just overload them with facts and with material, and they don't have a chance to develop individuality, and individuality comes with being confident in at least in one field and being able to do something really original. Well,
you're a terrific example of somebody who is highly interdisciplinary. I mean, you use the most abstruse physical, chemical principles to work out interesting biological things, right? So how did that come? Tell us how that came to be.
Well, I first studied sports.
That's right.
Then I got a PhD in organic chemistry.
Yes, and then?
And never follow the course in biology, which would have been a disaster because it would have built up a wall for me to get to in half a year to learn modern biology. So I think I was reading Watson's the first edition of.
Oh, it was a
Watson's
wonderful book.
Yes, that was all I needed.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. The importance of weak interactions.
Yes.
Yes.
So it was really a mix, force and back. And-
I think what
Are we getting
what-
off the point?
No, I think what the point to be made here is that we have to recognize that there is a good reason why universities teach disciplines. Even if they are accused that this is not enough, a discipline teaches you what is an important question and the tools how to handle important
And also
questions
how to approach
in your
different
field,
problems.
in your field and different problems. But at the same time, the wish and perhaps even the necessity is there, like with the language. You have to learn also to understand at least another language, to understand at least other disciplines. I think this is one of the preconditions. But maybe we are getting off the track. And I've been leading you off the track. But you got me started because you were describing what is happening, and I'm wondering to what extent is this, transmitted to.
But it is
to the
important,
next,
Helga, in these
generation.
days where society often says, all these isolated ivory tower scientists with their disciplines are rather a danger rather than a solution. It's important to emphasize that you have to be a jack of all trades, perhaps, but a master of one. And if you don't have a discipline, you don't know what scientific methodology is, and hence you cannot even communicate with others. But you have to also rise above your discipline in order to recognize what is at the boundaries of your own discipline.
Let me now turn to Katsuto Kato next
Yes.
to me. The question was really, what does it mean for other disciplines? You were trained
Yes, that's right.
in one discipline. You have moved on to policy issues, to various
Perhaps I'm
ethical
a
issues.
funniest
So,
medical school professor in Japan. Because
so where did you
I was
start out?
trained as a biologist and went to study, do research in Cambridge under Nobel laureate John Gurdon, and then came back and start working on social issues, and did a faculty position for 10 years in the Research Institute in Humanities, and then now 3 years ago I took a position of medical school. So I think I have a message to the young people here, particularly in Asian countries and Japan. I think the key is to jump. Just jump.
From where to where?
From where you are to anywhere you think it is important for you.
Don't be
And
afraid.
by having the question, say, what is the significance of genetic evolution to the society? Where do you go? Well, maybe you go first in science and study science, but then you go to, say, sociology or law or whatever. So those kind of interdisciplinarity on top of your basic discipline. I think
So
that's it.
if you encourage young people to jump, is there a pad on which they can land? Or are they jumping into the abyss?
The key is to find a good mentor, very good mentor you like. And then if they like you, they will give you a position.
We're getting some very good
I think
advice
that's
here.
very good advice.
Sorry, you have to come to me afterwards. I can tell you more. The tips of jumping.
Let me continue the genetic revolution and other disciplines. Louise mentioned
Sorry,
already.
I wanted to say
Okay, sorry.
serious.
Sorry.
I think the impact can be for applied, say, industry or medical field, medicine, but I also feel that the impact of genetic revolution can be to social science and the humanities. And I think social scientists particularly, can have a lot of questions to answer, to ask about the significance of genetic revolution and science, and those impact is expanding at the moment, but I'd like to see more.
I wanted
well,
to get...
if I listened with interest to the viewpoint of agriculture and food science. Isn't it so that the genomic revolution enables you to understand what has been done for centuries?
Yes, that's certainly the case.
And then understanding what has successfully been done by farmers, and essentially by farmers over centuries, you all of a sudden understand what is happening, but now you repeat in a designed way what they have been doing.
Well, but in between the farmers and modern genetics, there is, of course, nearly a century of plant breeding and animal breeding, which was...
You mean it wasn't the farmers who did the breeding?
Well, there was a lot of selection, not necessarily breeding, but there was, of course, a lot of selection which was more than just natural selection as agriculture evolved. But a lot of that, as I said this morning, if you select for certain characteristic and you don't know how the genome works, you get a lot of unwanted characteristics. And the best one is that if you go, for example, if you go for sweet apples and big apples, they're often far more prone, logically so, to all kinds of pests and diseases, because if they're attractive to humans because of the high sugar content, they're also attractive to molds and all kinds of pathogens. So to try and disentangle the issue of susceptibility, for example, to mold or fungus in general, and still retain the sugary content, means that you have to be far more focused. You could do that with classical genetics because of the statistical approach. That's what Tim mentioned in our previous panel. You had to do a lot of statistics and you had a sense of what characteristics more or less would go together. Now we are in the third phase, from the farmer selection to the classical breeding to the modern genetic design, which tells us exactly if we want a point mutation, or if we want just characterization, or if we want to introduce a bit of a genome from another crop or other animal, or, for example, from a bacteria. And some of the most successful work in genomics recently has been done by taking, for example, the characteristics of a bacteria and help a plant to actually adapt better to, for example, another pathogen. And it's crossing the kingdoms there that fundamentally alters the game, because farmers could never do that. Apart from the fact that in human evolution, of course, we had bacteria and mitochondrial bacteria.
Did it not happen to the farmers by accident?
No, it was trial and error. So there was a lot of accident also.
Yes, of course.
And a lot of time. I mean, 10,000 years are now being compressed in a few decades.
Absolutely.
So where do you see impact on other disciplines?
Well, I see the impact primarily in that everybody who is somehow involved in biological or biomedical research, and that includes applications in plant sciences and so on, now has a chance to put his work or her work much better into perspective than this was possible before we had the knowledge of the genetic outline of our being.
And since you want to talk about the future later on, but nevertheless, I would like to prod you a little bit to say, where do you see for the future? Because science builds on what has been done so far, but then there are the unexpected, sudden deviations that happen. Where do you see sort of possible new lines of exploration happening in other disciplines or together with other disciplines?
Well, I rather predict the past also here. And if we predict the last 15 years, then it is surprising how little, to what little extent, the genomic knowledge has been exploited in practice. It is, I mean, there is this talk about personalized medicine, and I very much liked the lecture by Dr. Roberts this morning, who points out that the biota that we carry around in our bodies has 1,000 times more genetic information than our own genome. Now, how can we talk about personalized medicine based on the human genome alone and not take into account the variation in the biota which occur with age, which occur with change in culture, different nutrients, which change on onset of a disease, and so on and so forth. This is a very complex interplay, and I think only based on the genomic information are we able to survey the ensemble of these different factors that have to interplay in an optimal way in order to keep us going as we would like to. And if we want to design something for, I mean, like a person-directed medicine, we have to include in the considerations also these lower animals which cohabit our body and which contribute to what is happening.
Katsuto, you have a good overview still, I think, about biomedicine.
Yep.
I always thought that personalized medicine is not only wedded to the genomic side, but it tries to find, if you want, a customized way of dealing with diseases.
Oh, you mean the... Well, my view about the impact of genetics to medicine, practical medicine, is that, yes, we do see some hype. So, say, personalized medicine and precision medicine is coming very soon. That may be a bit of hype. However, it is also true that we do see a lot of steady progresses, such as the one talked about this morning, say diagnosis of genetic condition and so on. So I think we need time, and I'm sure that there will be many applications in the coming years in the field of medicine, and so that's the issue we have to communicate, or we have to share with society. So science is not simple, but science is not all or none. We make progress. So how do you value that? That is up to the society. I see many actual applications are coming to the reality.
You mentioned also that there may be a bit of hype, and you can also see the pressure on researchers when they put in an application to say in advance what they will find and the impact it will have, etc., which of course increases and feeds back into the hype, and then media pick it up, so it is it's brought out in the society as something that is going to happen within a very short time, instead of being more honest and say, we don't know, it takes a much longer time.
But I think it's how science works in a way.
Yes, but it has to be communicated. It has to be communicated in this way.
But you see, what we should be able to prevent by going in the direction of personalized medicine is incidences, as we have had it with drugs, that would be beneficial for millions of people, and then hit individuals who might die from side effects of the drug. And if you have 3 such cases, the drug is taken off the market, the damage done to the company is enormous, and the damage done to mankind is equally bad, because there was a lot, I'm talking about millions of
Yeah.
users. You see, you can never be quite sure with phase 3 drug tests. You cannot do a drug phase 3 test on millions of people. You can, if it goes high, it is 10,000, but usually it is thousands. And then you apply the drug, and after 3 years, someone dies. And after 5 years, you have another death, and by then, millions have used that drug beneficially, but it has to be taken off the market. There have been several such incidences during the last 10 years. And this is what we should be able to get around. And I have not yet seen really clear-cut lines to follow in this direction.
I think.
Do you have a comment on this?
I think there are some examples. I can't tell you details, but some. And I think the reason why researchers are making biobanking project and cohort project, and also collecting some health information and nutrition information, is to really stratify the people about the, say, responses to adverse responses to drugs. So I'm hoping to see more examples of the success in the coming years.
You want to jump in?
No, I just wanted to, I mean, in terms of, impact on other
disciplines.
things, I mean, so the law is an obvious example, right? I mean, there's been a real revolution in identifying people accurately, and who would have thought that would come from basic biology? Probably not. Archaeology is another example. You take a pot and you want to know what the people were eating. Now you can find out in many cases by the application of genetic technology.
And paleogenomics.
Paleogenomics, yeah, exactly. So it's certainly spread into unexpected corners. Whether this is important or not, I don't know.
Well, it is important for these fields because it's taken up.
Well, it's revolutionized.
If it is taken up and it works, and it is also important to society because I think paleogenomics is really rearranging. It's rearranging the view we have of human evolution.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned you're 3% Neanderthal. Yeah?
Yes. That's fascinating.
I think one of the things we should mention is that our inability so far to test many drugs on human cells. So the lecture this morning by Shinya Yamanaka is very important, that where he showed his experiment, well, his colleague's experiment on drugs, statin experiment. Yeah. So I also know that people using the CRISPR technology, genetic manipulation technology in animals, they are making sort of a animals model with human cells inside of the animal models, so they can administer the.
That's right. I mean, there are humanized mice and humanized pigs, all kinds of
rabbit and
wonderful things.
Rat and pigs,
Yeah.
and so of course we have to be careful about not to sacrifice animals too much, but still, this is opening up a completely new field. In vitro human drug experiment and in vivo, but the animal human experiment, well, drug experiment. So I'm really hoping to see some positive results.
I'm
but
sure
I think,
there will be
for me, for my field, not being a medical scientist, the most interesting issue here is that we have, as humans, actually exploited only a very small range of other types of species from what the evolution and nature gives us as a whole. Now, through genetic characterization, we can be far more focused in what we can actually use in a decent way. And let me use one example, and that's the one of biofuels, for example. We obviously need to move away from fossil fuels. Are there ways in which we can use the genome and characterize them, as well as perhaps change the genome of things like algae and bacteria and all kinds of other organisms to do away with some of the problems we have with fossil fuels. Put differently, this means that we are actually extending our reach over nature in a different and new way, in a far more designed way. That has also ethical implications, although people may feel less strongly about manipulating bacteria than they feel about manipulating rabbits or pigs or what have you. But it's an interesting new step, if you want, in the evolution, that we're not just encountering a few species that we then change. We might actually be changing species in a far vaster domain than we have hitherto. And I think we're only at the beginning of understanding that.
I think when we talk about, we all mean the same, but maybe we need to change the semantics a little bit to understand better what we mean. You see, in the aftermath of the determination of the human genome, we have had a wealth of new techniques developed, which conceptually do no longer necessarily have to do with genomics, but which are new techniques like those that you have just mentioned that go into archaeology, this is just techniques that are applied there.
Yes,
and yes, yeah. And so this, you see, I would sort of compare it to, well, this is a bit a sad comparison, but the technologies that have been developed during the Second World War, technologies to detect aircraft, to all sorts of things, they had an incredible impact on basic science after the war.
Yeah.
For decades. See, or space, I mean, space research, I mean, building rockets that you can shoot on the moon, that's the most important output from there is the technologies to make purer metals, to make cleaner surfaces, or take CERN. I mean, at CERN, the internet was developed as a side product. They needed means to handle all this data, and just on the side, they produced the internet in the particle physics, in the European Particle Physics Center. You see, I mean, there is not one corner of the earth that's not affected by the internet.
And this was totally unforeseen.
Right.
I mean, nobody said, we should have developed this thing.
I think we have to look at the minutes that are left here, and I still would like to get the audience in. I would invite you to ask at least 1-2 questions from the audience to this disorderly panel here. So, 1, 2, there's a microphone, 3, and then please be very, very short.
Mic, please.
Microphone.
All right, I'm Lavender from India, and I go with Dr. Kato's advice of jumping because I'm a medical biotechnologist, but the irony is I teach English in a high school, so doing a lot of jumping in. So the question is, regarding the personalized medicine, it's really very exciting, but will it ever come true? Or if yes, in how many years will it come true? Like 50 years, 10 years, 100 years? Please give me a number.
Oh, okay, we take or give us a range, not a number.
I am a senior student at University of Tokyo and studying biology. But as a person, I think the biggest problem of genetics is on the psychology, because if we analyze the genome completely, we are only a machines, because genome determine the structure or traits of mind. So who is?
What is the meaning of knowing the whole genome?
So,
okay. Third question, and then we come back to the panel.
Thank you for this wonderful chance. I would like to ask to you because at first when you your professor talking about interdisciplinary, I was thinking about researcher collaborating in some sort of way, but you're speaking about how someone mastering in probably more than one discipline. So I would like to ask, because Professor Kato here mentioned about we have to jump if you want to do interdisciplinary.
Please come to the question.
Yeah. So does it mean that we have to take a new doctoral program?
Okay.
Say the last part again.
Does it mean that we have to do a new doctoral to apply to another doctoral program?
Okay. So the question has been about give us a prospect about personalized medicine. The question about the whole genome and its meaning, and the third question was obviously directed to you about the curriculum.
I'll be very brief.
You want to say something about the whole genome?
I wouldn't dream of commenting on the whole genome. That's your business, Helga.
I'm here as a moderator.
Free will and determinism.
I'm here as a moderator.
I'm not going to go there.
Yeah. So,
personal medicine. Let's take the example which was mentioned this morning. So breast cancer gene, those we didn't know very well 10 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, even not very well. So it is a personal medicine, and we do know that other examples in which you can test genes and then administer some of the cancer drugs. So you may say, oh, that's very few, but still that's a personal medicine coming on. And how many from now? I don't know, but we keep working on.
I think, again, semantics is important. That doesn't mean that the ideal drug for one person has been found. It is a group of people. It's a group of patients.
Yes, that's why people say precision medicine rather than personalized medicine now.
Right.
So for the interdisciplinarity, I say you don't have to get the second PhD, because interdisciplinary, you get a first PhD, then use your ability for other work to ask more interesting questions, not just to stay in the same field.
You mean befriend physicists?
It's always useful. No, it's very useful. So nobody wants to answer the question about the genome?
Well, if we don't have...
we are more than genome. We are more than genome.
That's a good answer.
Know that.
Well, there is no reason not to do the whole genome by now. It's so cheap. And if we hadn't known entire genomes of organisms, we would never have been sure about how many proteins there are in a given organism, how much of the DNA is really being transcribed, how much of it is junk DNA, as it is said, and so on. We would never have had a chance to learn about all these things if it had not been that the complete genomes have been sequenced.
No, but I don't think the complete genome is going to tell us very much about consciousness.
No. About consciousness?
Well, have you been to the United States? Meet sort of a Japanese American there. Japanese American. We share a lot of common genes as Japanese, but their behavior or way of thinking are very different. They're more like Americans.
Their nutrition is completely different.
It's the bacteria. It's all a hamburger.
Comparison.
I didn't say which is positive. It's all different diversity of culture.
It's not in the genes,
So
it's in the food.
We come to the end of this very lively panel, as you have heard. There's not one message to take home. The impact is there. The impact takes different directions from what you think they would take. It takes different forms, and it involves people, young people, curious people like you, to take up the challenge and run with it. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks to my panelists here.
ただいまより25分間のコーヒーブレイクとさせていただきます。 7階ロビーに飲み物を用意しておりますので、ぜひご利用ください。同時通訳レシーバーは出口で回収させていただきます。お持ち帰りにならないようご協力をお願いいたします。なお、総括パネルディスカッションは16時10分から開始いたします。引き続き、ノーベルプライズダイアログ東京2015をよろしくお願いいたします。Now we would like to take a 25 minutes coffee break. Beverages will be served in the 7th floor lobby. Please make your way up to the 7th floor lobby and enjoy the beverage. Please return the simultaneous interpretation receivers at the exit. We ask for your cooperation to make sure that they are not taken home with you. And the concluding panel discussion will begin at 4:10 p.m. Please stay with us for the rest of the Nobel Prize Dialogue Tokyo 2015.